Question. How do you solve the second sight from compacting witchcraft? Answer. Though this correspondence with the intermediate unconfirmed people betwixt man and angel be not ordinary to all of us who are superterraneans, yet this sight falling to some persons by accident, and its being connatural to others from their birth, the derivation of it cannot always be wicked, and too great curiosity, indeed, to acquire any unnecessary art may be blameworthy, but the verse of the secret Commonwealth may, by permission, discover themselves innocently to us who are in another state, as some of us men who are do fishes, which are in another element, when we plunge and dive to the bottom of the sea, their native region. In the process of time, we may come to converse as familiarly with these nimble and agile clans, but the greater pleasure and profit, as we do now with Chino's antipodes. Question 2. Are they subject to vice and lusts, passion and injustice, as we who live on the surface of the earth? Answer. The seers tell us that these wandering aerial people have not such an impetuous and fatal tendency to any vice as men, as not being drenched in so gross and dredgy bodies as we, and yet are of the same imperfection state, and some of them making better essays for heroic actions than others, having the same measures of virtue and vice as we, and still expecting advancement to a higher and more splendid state of life. One of them is stronger than many men, yet do not incline to hurt mankind, except in mission as a gross misdemeanor, as for the destroying angel of Egypt, and the Syrians, Exodus 12:29, 2 Kings 10:35. They haunt most where the most barbarity, and therefore our ignorant ancestors, to prevent the insults of that strange people, used as rude and curse as a remedy, such as exorcisms, donations, and vows. But how soon ever true piety prevailed in the place, it did not put the inhabitants beyond the reach of authority, and these subtle inferior inhabitants and colleagues of ours, the Father of all spirits and the person himself, having only command of his soul and actions, a concurrence they may have to what is virtuously done, for upon committing a foul deed one will find demur upon his soul, and if his cheerful colleague had deferred him. Question 3. Do these airy tribes procreate? If so, how are they nourished, and what period of time do they die? Answer. Supposing all spirits to be created at once in the beginning, souls to pre-exist to circle about through several states of probationship, to make them either totally inexcusable or perfectly happy against the last day, solves all the difficulties. But in very deed and speaking suitable to the nature of things, there is no more absurdity of a spirit to inform one infant in the body of airs than a body composed of a dull and dressy earth. The best of spirits have always delighted more to appear into aerial than to terrestrial bodies. They feed most what on quintessences and ethereal essences. The pith and spirits only of woman's milk feed their children, being artificially conveyed, as air and oil sink into our bodies, to make them vigorous and fresh, and the shorter way of conveying a pure ailment without the usual digestions, by transfusing it, and transprying through the pores and veins, arteries and vessels that supply the body, is nothing more absurd than an infant being fed by the navel before it is born, than a plant, which groweth by attracting the lively juice of the earth through many small roots and tendons, whose coarser parts, be adapted and made communal in the whole, doth quickly coalesce in the ambient cold, and so are condensed and baked up into a confirmed wood in the one, and solid body which flesh and bone in the other. A notion which, if entertained and approved, may show that the late invention of soaking in the transfusion, not blood, but ethereal virtual spirits, may be useful both in the nourishment and health, whereof if a vestige of the damnable practice of evil angels, there is sucking of the blood and spirits out of the witches' bodies, till they drew them into the deformed and dry lineages, to feed their own vessels. Withal, leaving what we call the witch's mark behind. A spot that I have seen, as a small mole, horny and brown-colored. Throw witch mark when a large brass pin was thrust, both in the buttock, knife, and roof of the mouth, till it bowed and became cooked. The witches, both men and women, neither felt a pain, nor did bleed, nor knew the precise time when this was doing them, their eyes only being covered. Now, the air of a body, as well as the earth, no reason can be given why there may not be particles of a more vivific spirit formed of it in procreation than it is possible to be the earth, which takes a time and pains to rarefy and ripen it, ere it can come to some prolific virtue. And if our apting darlings did not thus procreate, the whole number would be exhausted after the considerable space of time. For though they are more refined bodies and intellectuals than we, and of far less heavy and corruptive humors, which cause the dissolution, yet many of their lives being dissonant to the right reason of their own laws and their vehicles not being wholly free of lust and passion, especially of those more spiritual and haughty sins, they pass, after a long healthy life, into one orb and receptacle fitted to their degree, till they come under the general cognizance of the last day. Question 4. Doth the acquiring of the second sight make any change on the inquirer's body, mind, or actions? Answer. The uncouth sight enfeebles the seer. Daniel, though familiar with divine visions, yet fell frequently down without strength, when dazzled with the power which had been ascendant of, and passed on him beyond his comprehension. Chapter 10, 8, and 17. So our seer is put to rapture, transport, and forced to death, as divested of its body and all its senses, when he is first made participant of the curious peace of knowledge. But it maketh no ramp or strain of the understanding of any, only to the fancies of clownish or lettered men, and creates some affrightments and disturbances because of the strongness that shows, and the unacquaintedness of them. And as for their life, the persons endued with this rarity are, for the most part, candid, honest, and sociable people. If any of them are subject to immoralities, the obstruse skill is not to be blamed for it, for unless themselves be the tempters, the colonies of the invisible plantations which they intercommune do provoke them by no villainy or malefice, neither their first acquaintance nor after their long familiarity. Question 5. Doth not Satan interpose in such cases by many subtle, unthought insinuations as to him who lets the fly or familiar go out of the box, and yet found the fly in his own putting in, as serviceable as the other would have been? Answer. The goodness of the life and designs of the ancient prophets and seers was one of the best proofs of their mission.